Welcome everyone to Mail Fuzz TV. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are here to talk about Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Season 1, Episode 10. It is called The Nagus. So, full spoilers for the episode. And it's been a little while. In fact, this is the third time I watched this episode, because there was multiple attempts to do this review. And I don't remember what happened now. It was a while ago, but somehow it was Connor's fault. It probably was. If I watched the episode and it didn't happen, it was probably your fault.
I'll accept blame for definitely one of them. The other one I'll take, like, there's a 50-50 chance.
Oh, so one's definitely your fault and the other's 50-50. It could have been your fault.
I'm playing the odds here.
Right,
like,
so...
statistically speaking, yeah, one of them was almost certainly my fault. The other one, maybe.
So we are back. We're on a Deep Space Nine episode. This is an episode that introduces a bit more lore to the Ferengi in particular. We have a pretty famous actor playing the Nagus, which is their leader. The voice is very distinct, where you can't obviously visually recognize him because he's under all the Ferengi makeup. But the by the second he starts talking, you're like, wait a minute. If you know that voice, you'll know him. You'll get a picture of him in your head. Now I couldn't tell you what his name was because I never knew his name. But most people probably know him from The Princess Bride. But he's been in various things.
Yeah.
Really distinct voice.
Also, Princess Bride is one of the most overrated movies I've ever seen.
I mean,
just throwing that out there.
I've only seen it the once, and I remember thinking it was okay. But
it's fine. It's not bad. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. It's fine. But the way people think it's like perfect, no, it is not one of the best movies ever made. I'm sorry.
No, I never got that feeling myself. But yeah, so. Yeah, that's the A-plot. The A-plot is the Nagus, and everything going on with, obviously, Quark, and everything with the Ferengi side of the plot. And the second plot is to do with Jake and his Ferengi friend.
It's all Ferengi, this episode.
Yes, and obviously Sisko himself, him dealing with Jake's friendship with Nog. So that is the gist of the episode. Basic way it goes is that the Nagus transfers his power. He chooses Quark as a successor and then dies. But of course, by the end of the episode, it's revealed that this was all a test for his son, who's one of the guest characters as well, to see if he was prepared, if he was ready to take on the role, and he failed spectacularly. So
yeah, he does not do a good job.
That said, though, the enjoyment of this episode, I think, is Quark thinking he is the new supreme leader of all Ferengi and just loving every second of it.
Yeah. I've said already in some recent episodes that Quark's one of my favorite characters to watch. And this episode is a pretty good showcase of why. He's just entertaining. Yeah,
no, he is. He's great. It's him reacting to thinking that, he can't tell the Grand Nagus that he's an imposition, but he's constantly thinking that and saying that when he's not around. So his body language will change to be sniveling and kissing his ass, but then he'll turn and he'll and then there's lots of little things in this that just really affirm a lot of Ferengi things. For example, the episode opens with the brother Rom, who gets into trouble from Quark because a woman in the club and the bar lost her purse, and Rom returned it to her fully intact, and Quark is so appalled that he did this. This is against Ferengi customs and principles, that he says you're going to clean every single railing in the bar that night, which amusingly then Rom passes on to his son when he's mad at his son for something, and 10 seconds later.
Classic delegation.
Yes, it's very good. But we get that, and then so when his brother ends up in one of the people, it's because the brother and the Nagus' son who are behind, they're trying to murder Quark in the back half of the episode. When he finds out, he's not mad. He's actually delighted. Oh, my brother's actually got a Ferengi spine after all. He was trying to take me out so that he could take what was mine.
Yeah, I'm still in charge here. I'm still above you in the food chain, so I'm still going to treat you like shit, but I'll treat you slightly less like shit.
Yeah, there was a lot of good little moments though that sort of teased that, actually, because between the first scene where he gives him shit for giving the purse back, But then later on, when he becomes Nagus, Rom goes, since you're going to be Nagus, so you're going to be so busy with all your presidential duties or whatever, I was thinking maybe I could run the bar. Honestly, Quark's laugh, hysterical laughter for the next 30 seconds, as he says, "Run my bar, you! Run my bar!" and he's laughing his head off. That was legitimately quite a funny reaction. And it's like, you know what? I completely buy why his brother would want to kill him.
Yeah. Deserves it.
Yeah. He also gives up his brother's quarters for Nagus. He's like, why don't you use my own brother's quarters while you're staying here? Yeah, just little things like that. He's constantly using him and making him the butt of his jokes and belittling him every opportunity he gets.
Which seems to be the way it's supposed to be for Ferengi.
Oh yeah, because the Nagus, like at one point, Quark's, you get a compliment from the Nagus and he says, "Oh, I've not been that successful." It's like, don't contradict your elders. He's like, yes, I've been quite successful. Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah. And Nagus has got an eye on his bar.
Yeah. Well, he's worried about that, and then the Nagus cracks a joke about it at the end, saying, maybe someday we'll come back and buy it for a fraction of its value. And all of this as well, the sort of the larger mythology sort of tying into all this is the idea that this wormhole is a whole new place for them to like
exploit.
I was going to say like spread their commerce, but let's be honest, the exploitation is the name of the game. I love that in the scene the Nagus has with like all the Ferengi heads that come to visit. Yeah, like one of them complains that, or I think it's the Nagus himself who says, "Oh, our reputation isn't very good because of the lies of our competitors." And then maybe 30 seconds later, yes, when we go to the new district, the new quadrant, our word will be our bond until we decide to break it. Like,
yeah. They know full well it's only a matter of time, but they're going to milk it for all it's worth while they can.
But what I think what's so funny about that, though, is that why have the lie of like our competitors lie about us and say that we're not trustworthy, but then openly admit they're not trustworthy in the same scene? It's like, who are they lying to in this scene? Why are they even keeping up the pretense if they're going to admit it openly? I don't.
That's just how they are, right? That just speaks to the way that they always have to blame someone else, even though they know the reality.
Yeah. So their hope is that they'll go through to the Gamma Quadrant and find a bunch of species that don't know Ferengi, don't know that they shouldn't be trusted, and make lots of money.
They're very proud of Quark for being set up right in the right spot to exactly exploit all this customer base that have come through. He did a great job picking where he's got his bar.
That's taking the initiative. Yeah, he knew exactly what he was doing when he picked this location.
Yeah, and they could have done it. Like, he's like, it wasn't even here when he started, but like, doesn't matter. He still made the right call.
You kind of get the impression, because Ferengi always just take credit for anything that falls in their lap, that's effectively, they're just assuming he's going to take credit, so we have to congratulate him on this wise choice. Yeah,
exactly.
This is how it works. This is what we do things. But yeah, I mean, him with the staff and with the robe and the power going to his head. I love him stroking his weird alien pet and being like, "That's a very lucrative opportunity." Everything's very shade. It's like he's the Godfather, and everyone's coming to his office to beg for the right to like sell in the street corner, or I say street corner, space sector, but it's the same thing.
Pretty much, yeah. That's his turf, damn it.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, like, this is an enjoyable episode. I wouldn't say it's like the greatest plot ever, and it's not like the most like dramatically engaging, but it's generally amusing and entertaining. Something as simple as the first the attempt on Quark's life. Someone's put a coin down because he'll go to pick it up, and that's meant to put him in place for this blast that's going to hit him. And it ends up missing him just by chance. But like it's like, oh, it's literally leaving breadcrumbs out, and someone falling for it
almost works.
Yeah. So, and there's not as much of Odo in this episode, although he does T-1000 through a door. He goes under the door and comes up.
That's pretty cool.
It's the most T-1000 thing he's done yet. But there's a great moment, and it's just a simple little thing, but after they think the Nagus has died, and they're at the quote-unquote funeral where they're selling his remains, although it's not really him because he's not dead, but it's neither here nor there. Quark's laughing his ass off about something. It's the brother asking to run the bar. That's what he's laughing about. Yeah. The way that like the shot just kind of like transitions over a little bit, and Odo just steps in behind him. It's like he's this force who's not really been in the plot yet. Like I think Cisco called him and said, "There's a lot of Ferengi showing up. Keep an eye on it." But this is the moment where he steps into frame, and it's like, right, something's going on here, and I'm here to investigate it. Like immediately, Quark stops laughing, and it's like once again this dynamic of the two of them. It's almost like for the episode we're getting too used to Quark being around his own kind, and that's like almost warping our brains as to what logic is and what right and wrong is and how the world works. And then Odo's this stark reminder: no,
this is reality.
This is reality. This is my station. Like we're looking into this. So there's not a lot of Odo in this, but like that one moment that just sort of broke up the Ferengi antics worked. Yeah. I mean, all that I don't have a whole lot to say about.
No, I don't think it's a particularly deep episode. I think it's extremely enjoyable though, and I think it's very memorable to the point where you had to watch. This was the third time you watched it, as you said.
It was yes.
It was a good while ago. We watched it for the first time. I did not rewatch it, and I distinctly remember everything pretty clearly, and I think it is that memorable just based off of how enjoyable it is, as opposed to being enjoyable for memorable for specific plot beats or anything like that.
Yeah, it's more just like, here's how the Ferengi work, and we have this general idea in our heads already of the Ferengi, but this was like a focus. Like, here's how they interact with each other. Here's their power sort of structure to an extent. This is how like the superior like family member, in this case Quark and his brother, who he like dominates, like how they work, how the Nagus operates with his son. There's just like all these Ferengi relationships. We've
only ever really seen Ferengi on an individual scale, and by that I mean ones and twos, maybe 3 at a time. But this was the wider culture. Like I said, we've heard bits and pieces of the last few seasons of Star Trek in general, but this here really is like, okay, this is the broad picture, and I assume this means we can play with the Ferengi a lot more going forward.
I would imagine so. Yeah,
we've got this kind of real solid baseline to build on now, so that they can reference these not necessarily these events, but just the systems that the Ferengi have in place, and we can kind of build from that.
Oh yeah, I doubt it's the last time we've heard of the Grand Nagus. Like, I suspect that's going to be a recurring element.
Even just the idea of, okay, all these the powerful like family heads and forming this little council.
Yeah, does it surprise you the Ferengi have a similar sort of structure as like all the mobs?
Not at all. It's not something before this episode that I would have necessarily predicted and said that's the system they're going to be using. But it's also not in the least bit surprising.
And obviously it's further explored with Nog and the stuff with the kids. But just to stick with the scenes with the adults first, when Grand Nagus finds out there's a school that Nog goes to, he's like, "And you allow this?" Like, that's a fun little scene. But I particularly like that the Grand Nagus' sons found out about this and like sort of starts ratting on him, where he's like, "There's a school run by the Federation, run by a female." And like just the outcry in the room, like, and immediately Rom's like, "No, you'll never go back to that class again, and no homework, no studying."
Yeah, don't you dare.
And I think, obviously, it's not mirrored exactly, but even Cisco, to an extent, even though he's glad that Jake is trying to make a friendship with someone who's a Ferengi, someone from a different culture, and that's something he's raised him to do, he kind of admits that, like, I don't really expect you to be friends with a Ferengi, though, because humans and Ferengi have never really been able to see common ground.
He's got a bias.
Yeah. And it kind of goes back to that old school idea of, like, the next generation will be better at some of these things than the prior generation. They'll some of the shackles of your bias, I guess, and your sort of your upbringing, like, because he's instilled good values onto his son will go further with it than he has, and so on and so on.
It's interesting contrasting the two of them, Jake and Nog, in that you've got Jake being going further and kind of being better, and whereas with Nog, it's not going further and being better, because that would mean he would be uber Ferengi, essentially.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
This is more, the traditional rebelling against the parents.
Yeah, it's kind of like So what we find out in the episode with Jake is that there's a little bit of a conflict with his dad because he doesn't want to go to this fireworks show thing down on the planet, and Cisco's a little upset that his son wants to spend time with his friend rather than him, but that's kind of like that's just an acceptance. Once they reach a certain age, they'd rather be with their friends than their parents. It's just kind of normal. And there's some jokes with O'Brien because O'Brien's filling it. Keiko's not back yet, but O'Brien's been the substitute teacher for the class, and he's really pissed at Jake for not showing up for dinner one night, and then the next day he's really pissed. He goes to find him, and then discovers and because of what he discovers, he doesn't intersect and get mad at him. He sees his son teaching a Ferengi, teaching Nog how to read and write, it was neatly mentioned by Jake in an earlier scene that he didn't know how to do that. So even though he's not going to school anymore, Nog's still going to Jake, and Jake's helping him to learn, to be better, to do that, sharing, it's not even human culture. It's just, all the cultures seem to have
basic
this
knowledge.
Yeah, all the cultures seem to have this belief that we should learn these things other than the Ferengi. All the main ones we know in the show anyway. So it's this incredibly sweet thing, and obviously he's proud of his son, and he just hugs him at the end and says, "Go be with your friend." And it's like, it turns out I'm raising a good little dude. I don't have to worry as much as I thought I did. Yeah. I just have to accept that he's got his own thing now. But it is that thing where, even though Cisco is the one who's championed this to his son, that they should try and make friends with other cultures, they shouldn't have these prejudices, things like that, he also thinks it's kind of hopeless with the Ferengi because of how they are. And here his son is actually making this bond in a way that no human in Ferengi perhaps has had before. And because of this, maybe Nog, when he grows up, will actually make a few other Ferengi better, in the sense that he'll, if it's not his own kids, then he'll inspire some others, and maybe over time the Ferengi will improve. And not to say that they have to give up their way of life per se, but just not be as malicious and unfriendly to the other cultures and races.
Yeah, they can still be uber capitalists, right?
Mm-hmm.
Basic, because that's essentially what they are. They can still do that, just without being quite as scam artisty about it, I guess.
Yeah, be legitimate businessmen.
Yes, which I'm sure Quark definitely has that on a business card. He is a legitimate businessman.
It's a legitimate business, yes.
Yeah.
All of this was solid, mythology building for the Ferengi. That's what this episode was, and even just the hope of the future with Jake and Nog was built buying into that as well. So it was very focused as an episode. Everything played.
It's not particularly exciting B plot as B plots go. It's not there's no action to it really. There's no real comedy or anything to it, as opposed to all the
Ferengi. The Ferengi stuff was way funnier. Yeah.
But I think this gives it it's tied in really neatly, and it gives it this counterculture view of, okay, well, not all Ferengi are the same. So just because we're seeing that, Nog is clearly different. Nog is wanting to learn, but maybe there are other Ferengi out there as well that are already like that we're just not
very possibly
seeing.
Yeah. It does make you wonder though, would they have started having some Ferengi who showed interest in these things if they weren't mixing with other cultures? All this mixing because all the cultures are mixing in the Federation and stuff like that. Not that the Ferengi are in the Federation, I don't think, but
I don't think so. And they kind of need other cultures to scam, because they can't scam each other too much, because they all know that they're scamming each other.
But maybe the idea that some of them are living in the same station with other cultures is maybe not
as opposed to the kind of the roving bands that we've kind of seen before, like the traveling merchants. Yeah.
So it's the sort of thing where just the mixing of cultures leads to more of a blend where things can maybe improve, because the best of both kind of come out.
What you saying? Yeah, Deep Space Nine it's a real melting pot.
Oh, it is. I mean, it's it's a hub for the one port to another part of the universe. So it makes sense.
More so than kind of any of the starships we've really seen so far. Even the Federation starships that have mixed crews.
They're mostly human, yeah, with some...
They are human dominated with other species there. Whereas, this station, if anything, it's Bajoran dominated, because that's more or less where they are.
I mean, at maybe most, it's maybe 50-50 in terms of human and Bajoran, and then... Well, that's still 50-50 because it's still the rest. But you know what I mean? Between the two of them...
They have an equal split.
Yeah. as opposed to being human dominated. But you're right, because it's Bajoran airspace. Not airspace, you know what I mean, like space. Yeah. they probably, if anything, they probably have a bigger number of people on the station. Yeah, just
we don't necessarily see them all as our main cast. I would assume that it's, in terms of what's actually there living on the station, that would be kind of how I assume it is.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One little note, there's one scene with Dax that I mentioned, so it's when Cisco's annoyed that Jake's not showing up for dinner, and he's just sort of sitting with the dinner's out on the table, and he's sitting playing with a baseball, and Dax comes in and is like, hey, what's going on, maybe you should go talk to him, blah blah. So they're just generic dialogue to move like Cisco to go talk to his son. But what stuck out to me here is the scene ends with Dax like taking a bowl and just spooning the stew or whatever it is into this bowl. But there's a moment while she's still talking where she tastes it a little bit, and I couldn't help but notice that the way she tastes it, she just sort of dips a fork just slightly into it, and it's like it really feels like Terry Farrell didn't like this, whatever it was, and wanted to get as little as possible on the fork for the tasting. That's what it felt like to me.
It was probably just stone cold by the time they got to the tasting.
Very possibly.
Just not particularly appealing, yeah.
It was basically, it was almost like putting a fork into soup and just like only getting a little bit of just liquid in the tip of the fork, and especially having watched the episode a few times, like every time it's stuck out even more. I'm like,
you really notice it.
She doesn't want to eat that. Whatever this is, she does not want to eat it. So yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to point that out. But anyway, there you go. That's Deep Space Nine. We're back on track. We're going to get this on track, I think, before we bring Outlander back. So We'll get track on. As for what's next time, I actually don't have it in front of me. What's next in terms of Deep Space Nine or Next Gen, but I'll tell you what's coming up in the next Deep Space Nine.
Cool then.
So the next episode is called Vortex. Here's the description: a man named Croden tells Odo he can take him to a place where aliens much like Odo himself exist, which would help Odo find out where he truly comes from. Alright, so we're getting an Odo-focused episode, maybe with some answers as to what he is.
Yeah. Bold prediction. They're similar, but they're not what he is.
Yeah, it feels too early to actually give any kind of answer to this. So yeah.
I think it's important to have this Odo episode kind of diving into that and his feelings on that. We've touched on them, but I think an episode focused on that is probably a good time for that. But also, I don't expect definitive answers already.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't expect anything either. So very good. So next up is Next Generation.
Okay.
Took me a second, but yes. We've got 2 Next Gens in a row coming up, and then back to 2 Deep Space Nines in a row, and then they start alternating again. So yeah, we're on Next Gen next. So we'll see you for that next time. But let us know what you thought of this Deep Space Nine in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters at mail_fuzz channel for channel updates. And of course, if you want to support the content, you can do that by going over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv or becoming a YouTube member. But either way, any and all help is appreciated. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching Star Trek, and maybe Odo should have pretended to be some of that green goo that was the remains of the Grand Nagus.
See how much it could be sold for.
Well, no, I'm just thinking if he like rises out from the green goo, it's just like someone coming back to life, because it's literally,
that's pretty terrifying.
It's the remains. It's like,
and would have been some nice foreshadowing.
The Nagus rises.